Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guests Arno Michaelis and Pardeep Kaleka. And they're here today to share with us their new book, The Gift of Our Wounds, a Sikh and former white supremacist find forgiveness after hate. When a white supremacist murdered 6 people and wounded 4 others in a Sikh temple in Wisconsin in 2012, Pardeep's family was devastated and torn apart. The temple leader, who's now dead, was his father. Meanwhile, Arno, a former skinhead and founder of one of the largest racist skinhead organizations in the world, has spent years of his life committing terrible acts in the name of white power. When he heard about the attack, waves of guilt rushed over him, and he knew he had to take action and fight against the very crimes he used to commit. When Pardeep reached out to him, an unusual friendship emerged out of a desire to make a difference. So let's welcome to the show Arno Michaelis and Pardeep Kaleka.
Thank you so much, Marianne. We're delighted.
Well, what a pleasure it is to have the both of you here. I saw this just heart-touching, profound discussion on C-SPAN's Book TV and had to reach out to the both of you to talk about this book because not only is it so timely with what we're going through as a society, but it gives it insight that maybe some people might not have into just violence and what provokes people to following that path and also the path of forgiveness on the other side.
Yeah, no, thank you, Marianne. And it's a shame that we have to provide that insight, but I think it's needed now more than ever. And we're thankful for being on the program.
Your very unique and powerful friendship was forged out of these horrific events. Can you share with our listeners how the two of you became connected? Because it seems that you're like 2 separate worlds apart at the time that this all happened.
Well, I mean, it developed in the aftermath of the August 5th, 2012 shooting that happened at the Sikh temple of Wisconsin, where my father and then 5 others were murdered by Wade Michael Page, who was a affiliated white supremacist. And during the aftermath of that, just trying to kind of what the Jewish community is doing right now to put on a brave face for the world. Me and Arno were both responding and trying to put a brave face on for not just the Wisconsin community, but the broader community, and how we go forward and how we forgive and forgive with a sense of vengeance of healing. And me and Arno met at that time about 2 months after the shooting, and really just from the beginning knew that we were going to work together going forward.
Well, it was really important to me to be part of the response to this because the man who committed the atrocity was from the gang that I had helped to start. So I felt a great sense of urgency and responsibility, trying to just really offer anything I could do to help people heal and also to prevent these kinds of shootings, which tragically this past weekend, just another one happened again, which is really discouraging, but at the same time, it's all the more reason why we got to keep going forward and not give up.
Yeah, well, obviously this discussion, it doesn't matter what political party someone belongs to, but as a society, this discussion needs to take place, and we need to move forward in finding a way to overcome this type of violence. I was sharing with you gentlemen before we got started, a friend of mine, her daughter was in the Aurora, theater when the shooting happened, and she survived, but she ended up losing her leg, and it's, so many other people she was with, they passed. It was just really difficult, and it's becoming so much of a norm nowadays. I mean, we have to look at ways that we can move beyond this as a people.
Yeah, and I agree entirely. I think the one thing that a lot of people have a hard time getting their head around is that there's no simple answer. There's no. don't want to say silver bullet, but there's no solution like that where we, with a stroke of a pen, can just make this stop happening. Really, the only answer to bring about a society where all people are valued and included and aren't moved to go shoot each other is for everyone to see themselves in other people. And so I think we really got to focus on that as a grassroots effort while having discussions about policy and other more immediate steps we can take. But if we just take the knee-jerk reactions without seeing ourselves in others, I don't think that's going to go very far to solve the problem.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Well, and the book does kind of parallel both of your journeys in many ways, and I love how it goes back and forth from what's happening in your world, Arno, and with Pardeep as well. And Arno, so when you started to react out as a kid, what were some of the things that brought you to that place?
For me, I just wanted to piss people off. I had a habit of doing that since I was a little kid. It was an addiction, like any kind of substance abuse, and it was always never enough. Like, I could never offend people enough. I could never repulse people enough. And when I came upon the idea of adopting a swastika and white power ideology as my identity, that was like the penultimate means of pissing people off that a alcoholic, violent 16-year-old could find. So I don't think there's ever a good reason for people to adopt a violent extremist ideology, but my reason was as hollow as any. I can't say that I had bad experiences with black people or Jewish people or something that, some violence that I had endured that drove me to that point. It was really just like I was looking for kicks. I got my kicks by lashing out, and the swastika just seemed the most effective means to do that.
Mm. Well, and it's interesting how people look for community and where they'll go sometimes as well. And if we can reach out to people, I think at a younger age and get them more included in different communities, ones of compassion, because I know you gentlemen have Serve to Unite, that's kind of brings that together. It gives the people a home to be at.
Yeah, I've been working in counterviolent extremism for about 8 years now internationally, and whether you're talking about the so-called Islamic State or you're talking about the Klan or you're talking about Antifa, regardless of what direction it's coming from, violent extremism is driven because basic human needs aren't being met. So if you're in North Africa or the Middle East, those basic human needs may be at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, like food and shelter and employment. But in the States, as well as in Europe, the needs are a little more spiritual in the sense of needs for identity, purpose, and belonging. And fortunately, most people find healthy answers to those needs, but for people who don't find healthy answers to them, there's all sorts of unhealthy ones just kind of waiting to pounce.
Pardeep, I would love for you to take some time and just share with us who the Sikhs are. I think a lot of times either people get confused, they are unaware that Sikh is a different religion. And I think it's important to talk about this so that we can understand the differences.
Yeah, so Sikhs number probably about 30 million worldwide. It's the fifth largest organized religion in the world. It's one of the fastest growing religions in the world. There's really no, you're never trying to convert anybody to become a Sikh. But the word Sikh itself means learner. And it was, Guru Nanak was the founder, credited as being the founder, but there was a lot of philosophical influence that was happening within the sub-region of India at the time. And as India was meshing the politics and the religion of Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, so these religions help to guide the spiritual foundations of Sikhism, which at its core is that we are all one. So Ekam, this notion of oneness, that we come from one source, and the life of a Sikh is to be lived and said, try to understand that truth and try to come back to that with everything. And when this shooting happened, it was really tested that foundation of, well, do you still believe in oneness when somebody's coming into your temple and actively trying to divide? And it tests you, but it also tests the communal human family. And so we really took it as this was our calling. This is what we mean to the United States. At the time when Nanak founded Sikhism, India itself was divided amongst many, many different things, between religions, between socioeconomic conditions, kind of dogmatic beliefs. And he really was trying to bring people together to say, you know what, can you see, like Arno said, can you see yourself in the other? And he really found that people could not see themselves in the other because they had their own idea of what a personal God was. And that I think is what the times are telling now, as far as these places of worship are being targeted. Maybe what we're being called on to do right now is to sort of have a spiritual revolution of consciousness to see truly the God within the next person. And so that's kind of what Sikhism is. It's this learning process of always trying to see it, not just with the people that look like you, talk like you, walk like you, eat like you, dress like you, and have the same. That's kind of easy. The challenge was to see it in a person who is not like you.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, I look back on, I knew my great-grandmother and just the journey she took from Portugal to Hawaii and becoming part of the U.S. and the things that she went through. It really is interesting. Just, we all have our journey to a better place. Our families all came here to the U.S. for a better just a better life and a better existence. And so when we go back in our roots and look at that, I mean, we're not all dissimilar, when it comes down to it.
No, we're not. And even when you look at religions, they're not all that they're not all that different either. It's just trying to get you to a place. And then I think even like with this last shooting, the tree, the Tree of Life synagogue, we've had a lot of communication within the Jewish community, and it's, our roots are definitely the same, and going forward, they're going to be the same. So, while it saddens us that this happens to people, and while those 11 families will have to definitely go through their own personal grieving process, which will include lots of logistics of planning things and doing things and putting on this brave face for the world. And then, likewise, your friend who, lost her leg at the Aurora theater shooting. I think what will happen is they'll come through this with a more determined sense of community and family, and even a gratefulness for life that they probably didn't have before. And that gratitude towards life probably should be there for all of us. Nothing bad should have to happen for you to understand that. But just human nature is such that sometimes when horrible things happen to you, you stop taking things for granted. And that includes what binds us all together.
Was there a point where you felt like your faith was tested, after the murder of your father?
Oh, yeah. I continue to feel that way. I feel that, when tests are given and you pass them, bigger tests are given or harder tests are given. And I think that just, it continues to test your faith and it's fundamentally, I'm going to come back to that point of just oneness and saying, do you still believe? And do you still believe that we're one? Do you still believe that we're one? And not so much so as in the community's healing response, but do you believe that the shooter in this situation is one? Do you believe that the shooter in the synagogue case, Bowers, is one? Do you see that in the harmer, the person that does you harm? And that's the test of your faith. It's how do you forgive? How do you have compassion? How do you do that towards somebody who has caused you harm?
Yeah. And that you're so right, because that really is kind of the crux of it. It's easy to forgive people within our family and communities, but when someone's done something horrific, it's like, how do we get to that point of forgiveness?
Well, me and Arno talk about this, and we talk about it. You have to be vengeful. You have to be vengeful. You have to take action. You have to be able to separate between the person that did it and the ideology that they believed. We can't vilify or reject people out of being racists. We got to remember that's a person behind that, and the more that you reject that person, the more you're going to create a dangerous person for society. So I think we just have we've developed sort of this I don't know how to say it, but like the habit of kind of vilifying people. And what we mean to do is actually vilify the ideology. So we vilify the racist, but what we mean to do is vilify racism, or like do something against that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it is making that separation. In your book, The Gift of Our Wounds, you talk about, you've got several quotes that kind of explain that, and I thought that they were placed so nicely. In one, I'm probably going to butcher it, but it was, something like hate the sin but love the sinner, which it really looks for that separation from people and their actions, and and really looking at that we're all one, which is, it's got to be harder than what it sounds like.
Yeah, I think it is. It does sound simple. It sounds kind of like Nike's "Just Do It" theme, or like something. But like you talk to somebody who is going through severe depression, and the action of doing it, right? Like, okay, just get out of bed, just do it. It's harder to do than we might realize, and I think that's one of those things that it's like, okay, we can present it and say, hate the sin, but not the sinner. Is something that that's an ideology that we might be going towards. So yes, you're very right.
And I also think it's important to really understand what true defiance of hate and violence looks like in today's political climate, which that phrase is said in just about every talk, every interview that Pardeep and I do nowadays, but it's always apropos. People are talking about resisting, and people are talking about fighting invaders. Both sides have these really ridiculously elevated rhetorics going. But the true way to resist hate and violence is literally through peace and love. And Pardeep and I, one of the reasons we get along well, and probably one of the reasons we fight sometimes too, is that we're both very pugilistic still. Like, we both like to fight. And that's good because we're in a fight for our lives right now. We're in a fight for our children's lives, for our society. And in order to fight smart, you need to understand the enemy. I'm a big fan of Sun Tzu's Art of War, and one of the most powerful quotes from there is that, I'm paraphrasing, but it says, if you know yourself and your enemy, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know one or the other, you'll win half of them. If you don't know either, you won't win a single battle. And I'm afraid nowadays people really don't understand even who or what their opponent is. As Pardeep said, and we all have a tendency to do this. We intend to see people as our enemies when it's really these ideologies. And so I look at it as a kind of like a spiritual illness. And I mean, you couldn't hate someone for having cancer or some other form of disease, but you would definitely want to help cure that disease and get them back to health. And that is truly the way to defy hate and violence. That taking that approach is something that it utterly discombobulates people who are stricken with those sorts of spiritual maladies. And it is the best way to defy. It's the best way to resist. When we respond to aggression with more aggression, or when we reflect hate, and hate is very simply is a willful denial of compassion for people. And in that the definition, there's hate coming from all directions in our society, just like pumping out left and right. So we got to understand that compassion is really the antidote as well as the strongest resistance to hatred. And in order to have compassion, you need to quite often go through a forgiveness process. And when you practice kindness on a daily basis, then that compassion and forgiveness could come all the easier. And as Pardeep mentioned also, gratitude is just one of the most powerful personal assets when involved in this kind of fight. And it again breaks down to not letting your faith in humanity be shaken. That the attack at Tree of Life, the attack at Oak Creek Gurdwara, the attack at Emmanuel AME, the attack at Orlando, or the Boston Marathon bombing, all these attacks are meant to destroy our faith in humanity. Therefore, if we lose it, we are allowing our enemy to accomplish their objective. If we refuse to give up our faith, then we are working towards our objective instead of theirs.
I love how you talk about that being a type of spiritual illness, because it really does put it in perspective. You know, as far as being, at least it does for me, it's like, wow, light bulb went off on that one, where you can really separate what's going on with the person and have a greater sense of compassion for them, where otherwise it'd be really easy to just lump them all up into this category of people who are kind of a lost cause, or people who are, beyond approach,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to always keep that in mind. And I hope people get, one of the messages they get from the gift of our wounds is that redemption is possible. And I'm just very fortunate that my story paints that picture, and if people can come to that belief after reading the book or hearing one of our talks, then that's a big victory right there. Because when you look at someone who's doing harm and someone who's lashing out, and you refuse to give them a chance, then the chances of them making that turnaround are, again, all the slimmer.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're almost like the poster child for that, being able to make those transitions. Because here you were, former, Skinhead, you started this organization, you were in a band, and then you had the birth of your daughter, and it seemed from there that everything kind of started to make this gradual shift into the person that you are now.
Yeah, I'm so lucky. I use the phrase "the planets align" quite often when I'm talking about my turnaround, and it was all these different things falling into place. And if one of those aspects of my turnaround would have been missing, it's possible that I would have made the wrong decision when I became a single parent and a second friend had been murdered in a street fight and gone deeper into it. So my parents' love for me, their refusal to give up on me, people who I claim to hate who treated me with kindness, my daughter, and also pop culture things that I had deprived myself of, but really loved, like film and movies and sports and TV, like all that kind of day-to-day stuff is forbidden to any kind of fundamentalist ideology, and just seeing how much nicer life is when you're not saddling yourself with all these ridiculous rules is that's a big driver once you get a peek outside of that ideological box, is to be like, hey, this is amazing. Like, this is much nicer to live life this way where I can go where I please and talk to who I want to and enjoy whatever kind of culture I want to. In fact, the more the merrier. The more diverse, the better. That's who I am today, and I'm always very grateful for that.
Before I pop over to Pardeep here, I have one more question for you, Arno, on this. Did you find that at some point that you were kind of really stuck by your situation and you were looking for a way to move and get out, or was it something that was gradual for you?
I was involved in hate groups for 7 years, and looking back, I think honestly I was exhausted from the get-go. This habit I had of lashing out and pissing people off and getting an adrenaline rush that way was like any other kind of addiction, in the sense where I'm an alcoholic as well. I quit drinking in 2004 after drinking profusely for 20 years. And I know that when you're an alcoholic, you don't care like how you get your booze. You don't care like what, even when you know what you're doing is wrong, the addiction just takes over and makes you do things that you wouldn't have done normally. And that's definitely how my involvement in hate groups went. And I want to make a important point is that it's by no means, it's not an excuse. There's never an excuse for acting that way, but it's just the nature of the disease. So that exhaustion was building throughout the 7 years I was involved, and it just kept piling one thing upon another. When bad things would happen to us, when my best friend went to prison, when another good friend got shot and killed, we knew that we were living by the sword and dying by the sword, but we were still like putting all this energy into spin the bad things that we were bringing on to be reasons to double down on our ideology. And so I knew that was wrong, and it just required more and more energy. And I really think the acts of kindness from people that I claim to hate were what put me over the edge, in that I'm trying to foster this ideology where I'm separated from everyone, and these very brave people, again, are defying me by not letting me make the rules of engagement. And instead, they're demonstrating for me how human beings should treat each other. And it was all that stuff that like piled up until after 7 years, I was literally looking for an excuse to leave. And that came in the form of single parenthood, and then another friend of mine being shot and killed in a street fight.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Arno Michaelis and Pardeep Kaleka in regards to their new book, The Gift of Our Wounds. A Sikh and former whitehead supremacist find forgiveness after hate. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed, and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guests Arno Michaelis and Pardeep Kaleka, and they're here to share with us their new book, The Gift of Our Wounds. A Sikh and former white supremacist find forgiveness after hate. Okay, so Pardeep, before we went for break, there's something that is discussed in your religion about relentless optimism. What does that mean to you, and how can that help us when something horrific happens?
So, relentless optimism, we say Chardi Kala is the phrase, and it is from a bigger phrase. So I'm going to say the whole phrase. It's Nanak Naam Chardi Kala Tere Bane Sarbat Apala. And what that basically translates to is for the peace and prosperity of all people, we shall be relentlessly optimistic. And that has to do with, obviously, the history of Sikhi, which is 500 years of trying to find voice, trying to find strength. And within that, there's been horrible struggles. And because of the struggles, they really Sikhs really prided themselves on being relentlessly optimistic, on being forgiving, being compassionate. And lots of times we would say that phrase after every prayer, as we would almost commence with prayer for the day. We would say that phrase. And as a boy, I never really knew what it meant. I was, you just kind of say things at church or at your masjid or at the temple or, wherever you go to pray. Sometimes you don't really know the meaning. and it was August 5th that really taught me the meaning of it, as I saw an entire community, not just the Sikh community, but people who went out there, who left their congregations and came to the Gurdwara and really exemplified that phrase, relentless optimism. And then, most of these congregations that got out that Sunday did not know how to speak the same language. They thought that they believed in a different God and that they had their own God, but in a weird kind of way, they all just came and they showed up, and they were exemplifying that ideal, not just for the Sikh community, but for all of us, for the broader community, and saying that this person who came in and represented this ideology of white supremacy is not going to be able to dictate who we're going to be going forward.
I love that, because it really does put in perspective, just from a human standpoint, how we all should feel towards one another when when we have horrific things that happen. We should just, continue to move on and not let it affect us, which sounds easier than what it is,
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think this community at the synagogue, they are strong, they are resilient, they will move on with relentless optimism as well. They'll have changed, but they'll have changed for the better. And that's going to require not just them, picking themselves up, but us responding as an entire faith and human family.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, when we look at the Sikh community, just how people prejudge them a lot of times because they dress different and they look different, So it's interesting. I grew up in a melting pot in Pasadena in California, and we had every kid on the block that you can imagine for Sri Lanka, Mexico, the Middle East, you name it. And so it really wasn't a thing for me growing up, but for other people across the country, we look, because I know part of your journey, you start in the when your family first came, you start kind of in the Midwest, and it's a different culture there. It's totally different in the East Coast and in the Midwest. And so to kind of, when we talk about immigrants, when they assimilate into a new culture, it must have been very difficult for your family.
Yeah, it was. And when we came here, there wasn't a lot of even Sikh immigrants. There was a lot of families who, we traveled around quite a bit and just had Gurdwara at people's houses. And so stabilizing sort of the Sikh community was the inspiration for my father. Who's president for 15 years, which is unheard of for any Sikh temple because of just the politics of sometimes within the temple itself. So but there was the assimilation definitely led to us losing a little bit of who we were, such as language. My dad cut his hair. He cut our hair to kind of fit in. And there's just things that we did to try to fit in until the point that we realized that, there's some stuff that is unique and that's special, and then we should hold on to that. But yeah, no, I think just the Midwest is a little bit different. And over the past 6 years, me and Arno have been lucky to be able to go to different small towns. That we're changing in the demographic, and kind of help heal some of that tension that exists from a changing demographic. And I think about it now, and I think about sometimes that Sikhs are confused for Muslims, and if it's Muslims that are being persecuted, I think all Sikhs should say, if that's the case, that I am Muslim as well. And if it's Jewish people that are being persecuted, every Sikh should stand up and say, I am Jewish. And if it's immigrants that are being persecuted, and really there's a lot of paranoia against incoming immigrants, then we should all say, I am an immigrant, because that's the truth, is that our humanity lies in being able to see ourselves within those that are suffering.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's interesting because the United States has had things like this happen in their past before. We look at during World War II, there, here in the United States, and it's not really talked about a whole lot, but there were Japanese encampments. Because they wanted to make sure that no one that could be a potential spy would get out, which is just absolutely ridiculous, because people come here, looking for a better life. It's just kind of like that saying, not all French are good cooks. It doesn't mean that, everyone showing up here has evil intent, which I think we're coming to this point in our society where, people are saying enough, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, no, I think we are, and hopefully we are. God willing, we are. I think there's a lot of work to do. And the thing is, I know a lot of Muslims. We both know a lot of Muslims. We know a lot of immigrants. 99.99% of them come here and they say the same thing. I just want a better life. I just want to have a place where I can raise my kids and make a living. an honest living. I don't want to take everything. I just want a honest shot for an honest life. And I was reading some stuff on the whole immigrant caravan, and I couldn't help but to think about, and even go way back and say, listen, the Abrahamic faith had Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt. This caravan looked a lot like, and it tells you what do you think when you see these people who are trying to escape struggle and escape conflict. Why would they walk 1,000 miles or 2,000 miles? Why would they do that? With their children, with elderly, with people that have breathing problems. Why would they shower in lakes? Why would they do that? Why would they go through gang-infested areas where they could be harmed and hurt? What they want is the same thing that we sometimes take for granted. Just a life where they can raise their kids, and they can be free to say what they want to say and express what they want to express, and love who they want to love, and believe in whatever God that gets them to be a better themselves. And it tells me a lot to say, like, when people look at that and if they see parasites, if they see criminals, if they see really bad people, what that says about that particular person.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the middle. We're watching, and this humanitarian crisis is unfolding in front of us. And what we do is going to determine what type of a nation we are and what type of people we are. And I look at, the people that are in this group, and it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking because, I see myself. I'm lucky that I'm in the U.S. I could have been born someplace else and been part of that group as well, making the trip. And obviously these people are doing it because it's so difficult and dangerous where they're coming from. So.
It is, and another thing that's lost on so many people is that immigrants who like literally crawl through broken glass to get into this country are really the best citizens we could possibly ask for. Looking at the story of Pardeep's dad is just one of countless examples of that. This man came here with absolutely nothing, and he worked and worked and worked until he had built a very successful small business that brought all sorts of commerce to our society, jobs, made our society a better place. And while he was doing that, he also brought his cultural wisdom and his spirituality, his desire to serve. And I think that the people, whether they're coming from South America or the Middle East or Eastern Europe or wherever, and they come to the United States, that like Pardeep said, they're here to work and make our society better while pursuing a better life for themselves. And it's the people with the ambition and the drive to do that who are able to pick up and make these very arduous journeys to come here. And so I would hope that everyone could just understand from a human standpoint that these are human beings who are looking for help and a better life, and that would be all the reason they need to support them. But if that's not enough to make the case, you can very easily make a case economically that immigration is great for our society. And there's actually a lot of think tanks on the right side of the political spectrum that corroborate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without a doubt. And it's interesting, again, just using my own example, I look back on my family tree, and, my family, they were hardworking people, but that's what you had to do. You come here, you work hard, and, you can have that American dream. That's what that's all about. So.
Yeah, and I mean, there's such a sense of appreciation of being able to participate in that American dream. We were out in a town called Groton, Massachusetts, and a lot of it was there was tension between, and I'll call it the two sides. One side was sort of the preservationists who wanted to leave the town emblem the kind of way that it was, and then there was the other crowd who was we want to be inclusive, and trying to facilitate discussions between the two on how do they move forward. because the town emblem was a Bible with crosses around it, and then the inclusive was to say, okay, well, you might lose the way that your life exists today, and there has to be a little bit of that give and take. The solution became that the next political process, the next election, was going to be held in the new Hindu temple that was going to be coming to that town. So after giving both sides the ability to see one another, recognize one another, and have them participate in the political process. And so with this discussion, I think there needs to be a discussion of, like, how do we help immigrants be part of that political process? How is there, how long is the wait for immigration? What do people do to earn that immigration? But coming back to your family and then to other families, there's just a sense of deep appreciation that you have for this country, and a deep love that you have for this country to keep this country keep this country great.
Well, how about to continue to develop this into just a great country where we've got so many different people from so many different places? Because the thing is, if we're all the same, how boring would that be? I love that we have this beautiful interweave of color and just different differences, all that you can imagine. It's absolutely beautiful, and that's what makes America, I think, just an amazing place to be in. So, my goodness,
it does. And the other part is that yes, me and Arno, we respond to a lot of these tragedies, and that's part of our work. But we want to never lose sight that there's a lot of things that are going right, and they go right on a day-to-day basis. The listeners out there, on the podcast, our parents, they work at jobs, and they go home and they take care of their families. And one of the questions we get is, how can I do my part? What can I do to help ease some of the tension? And simply, people do prevention on a day-to-day basis. Prevention is done by parents, by community members, by teachers, by those who put good into the ecosystem. Prevention is done with a smile and holding doors. So we do this on a day-to-day basis, and never to lose sight that we're doing good. And maybe in these times when tragedy happens and this paranoid sort of message is going out into media, we need to just turn it up. We need to turn up our kindness. We need to turn up our compassion. We need to turn up the smiles, the holding doors, the conversations that we have with a friend who we know might be suffering and might be in trouble. So maybe just turning that up is the best advice that I can give.
I think that's beautiful advice. My goodness. And gosh, I could talk to you, you gentlemen, forever. I mean, I think it's your book, The Gift of Our Wounds, is such a profound book. It has changed my life, and I love it. And I highly suggest our listeners pick that up. But before we go here, I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about Serve to Unite. What is that organization all about, and how can people get involved?
Sure. Serve to Unite was conceived by Pardeep and other people that lost their loved ones on August 5th, 2012, like within days of the shooting. In Sikhi, pillars of the faith are seva, which is service to other people, and ikankar, which is oneness. So that's where the concepts of service and unity come from. Initially, the idea was to transform this atrocity into something inspirational. And again, this is done in a spirit of defiance. We're not going to let this stand just at this horrible mass murder hate crime. We're going to use this pain to find purpose, to bring people together and to heal and to bring about a society where this is less likely to happen. After Pardeep and I met, Par had already been scheduled to speak at a high school in Cudahy, which is a suburb of Milwaukee adjacent to Oak Creek, and he invited me to join him, and that was the first talk we had done together. And I already done a couple hundred talks by that time. I went public with my story in 2010, but that talk was far and away the most powerful one that I had been part of since then. And we got this huge standing ovation from 700 high school kids. And we were thinking then, like, we need a way to carry this forward. Like, it's great that we just inspired all these kids, but we need to, like, keep it going, like, give them some kind of framework to work in. So we began Serve to Unite as a school program in April of 2013. We had help from a great Milwaukee nonprofit called Arts at Large that helped us get funded and helped us get into Milwaukee Public Schools. And that's when Serve to Unite really kind of crystallized as a school program that involved arts-driven service learning and global engagement. So what that looks like is our students from second grade through college tell us what issues they're concerned about in society, including like the little kids. That we've had like elementary school kids be like, I want to help homeless people. Like, I want to help the environment. Like they have dreams and they want to serve as well. So when they tell us what issues they want to address, we help facilitate that. And everything we do is very arts driven. It's the arts are amazing means for anybody to express themselves and to make statements in society. And we feel it's really important to connect on a global level. So we have an amazing roster of people called Global Mentors who are all over the planet Earth. Some of whom are former violent extremists like myself. We have like a Mubin Shaikh, who is a former jihadist and now a counterterrorism expert, and others who are survivors of violent extremism like Pardeep. We have a brilliant woman named Dadine Umanyana, who's a survivor of the Rwandan genocide. And the Global Mentors connect with our students via whatever telepresence app they use, like Skype or Google Hangout. And they actually have interactions and conversations with them and share their experience and what it's like in their part of the world, what they have in common and what's different. A good example of one Serve to Unite project that happened over the past couple of years is we had a group at a Catholic high school who wanted to address Islamophobia in society. So we partnered with a great org in Wisconsin called Veterans Outreach in Wisconsin that serves homeless veterans. And with guidance from Yasmin Molbakis, who's a global mentor of ours in London, who used to be a recruiter for the Islamist group Al Mujahideen, and now helps keep young people from joining those groups. Yasmin came into our classroom via Skype, advised our students on how to reach out to the Muslim community in Milwaukee, which they did. Following her advice, contacted a mosque that happened to be like kind of a keystone mosque in Milwaukee, and made the arrangements to visit the mosque for a field trip. They had lunch with Muslim students at the Salam School, and then they pitched their service project, which was to organize food and clothing drives for Veterans Outreach in Wisconsin. And the imam and everybody at the mosque was delighted. They were super happy to be contacted, and as charity is a pillar of Islam, it was part of their spirituality to help. So over a period of a couple months, the mosques, along with our students, gathered over 2 tons of food and clothing and sanitary items for the Veterans Outreach of Wisconsin project. And and our students also created a beautiful mural to go in the common room for the homeless veterans. And there we have service, we have arts, service learning, as our students are connecting classroom learning to their service, as well as global engagement. And the objectives of this project, first and foremost, was to help homeless veterans of the U.S. military who have endured a lot of trauma and need our help. But the other objective was to change the public paradigm of what Islam's all about. So ever since then, if somebody starts going on like, oh, all Muslims are terrorists, blah, 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 it's always important to verbally challenge when that kind of discussion happens, but it's all the more powerful when you can say, oh, yeah, I'm happy to talk to you about that. As soon as I get back from the mosque where they've gathered 2 tons of food and clothing for homeless veterans of the U.S. military. By the way, how much food and clothing have you gathered for homeless veterans of the U.S. military? So that's what Serve Unite's about. It's about action, rolling up your sleeves, doing that work side by side. We've been very intentional about connecting young people from either side of the crushing segregation in Milwaukee, so that our young people are working side by side with people that they wouldn't have connected with otherwise, and seeing that they have more in common than not. And over the years, in addition to the veterans issues, our students do a lot for the homeless community. They've done projects to address human trafficking, racism, gun violence, community police relations, environmental issues, genocide prevention, Holocaust education. It's really just been absolutely amazing what these young people have been able to accomplish. And we've worked in over 30 Milwaukee schools since April 2013 and had prolonged school year-round contact with over 5,000 students. So that's what Serve Unite does, and we're in the process of scaling that beyond Milwaukee and beyond Wisconsin. And we're very excited to do that. And that's, again, one of the ways that we defy hate and violence is we bring young people of all ethnicities together to love one another and work together to heal society and solve problems.
I can't commend the both of you enough. I mean, you're doing such a beautiful job having this discussion take place with your book, The Gift of Our Wounds, and moving forward with that, because we all are connected. And I think when we realize that my story, your story, it's all our story, how much better we'll be. Where can people connect with the both of you, not only learn about your book, but also become part of your community?
We got all kinds of stuff going on. One of the other new initiatives we have that we're very excited about is we started an online magazine called The Gift of Our Wounds along the theme of our book. So we through video and through written pieces, we invite other people to come and talk about the gifts they found in their wounds. And people can find that the magazine content as well as the book itself on our Facebook Gift of Our Wounds page. If you go to giftofourwounds.com, that'll bring you to both places. We also have a Serve to Unite page on Facebook and our Serve to Unite website at serve2unite.org with the number 2. And beyond that, I have a personal blog at mylifeafterhate.com.
That is fabulous. Well, Pardeep and Arno, thank you both so much for taking the time to be here with us today and to share your book, The Gift of Our Wounds.
Yeah, thank you for having us on. And definitely go check out Gift of Our Wounds.
Thank you, Marianne.
Well, thank you so much, Arno and Pardeep. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, The Gift of Our Wounds. This book is a must-read for everybody. It's the perfect stocking stuffer, holiday gift, just something to share in your book club with your friends. It is a heart-wrenching, soul-touching book, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Make sure to pick up your copy at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and of course it's available at all indie bookstores. If they don't have it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. If you'd like to connect with Arno and Pardeep, you can at their website, serve2unite.org. That's serve, the number 2, unite.org, and also giftofourwounds.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.